When it comes to long range, snipers really can't be beat. Not only do snipers typically have high scope zoom, but they also have fairly high base damage as well, which makes them perfect for scoring criticals. And while I suppose it's worth mentioning that Borderlands 1 snipers aren't quite as good or as varied as Borderlands 2's, there are still some pretty amazing snipers in the original game. And today, I wanted to go over what I think are among the best sniper rifles in Borderlands 1. Now before we start, this video will be going over mostly unique, legendary, and pearlescent snipers in Borderlands 1. So while there are some great non-unique snipers in Borderlands 1, we'll mostly just be going over the more unique snipers as well as their potential hybrid variants. But I guess without further ado, these are the top 7 best sniper rifles in Borderlands 1, starting now. Number 7, the Volcano. So the Volcano is a relatively common but pretty great sniper rifle from Borderlands 1 that ultimately reappeared in the game's sequel. Now, of the two different versions, the Borderlands 1 version is arguably better as it doesn't suffer from a damage penalty, though I think we can all agree that the Borderlands 2 version definitely does look better. But I digress. The Volcano gets its effects from the Volcano accessory for Maliwan sniper rifles. Now, unlike the normal incendiary accessory for sniper rifles, which does provide a damage penalty, the Volcano receives no damage penalty. It actually has boosted fire rates, and the elemental blast radius is much greater than that traditional incendiary accessory. It's also worth noting that the Volcano will always spawn with a incendiary ×4 elemental multiplier, which gives the Volcano a very high proc chance, and that is always really good. Now, there's a pretty good chance that you'll come across a Volcano at some point or another as you play through Borderlands 1, as it tends to be one of the more common legendaries. Just try to get one with the highest base damage possible, and I think I can guarantee that you'll get a lot of use out of it, especially up against flesh-vulnerable enemies. Number 6, Kiro's Power. Now, the Kiro's Power sniper rifle is a pretty decent sniper that's acquired from an NPC named Kiros in the General Knox DLC in Borderlands 1. Now, if you've played Borderlands 2, Kiro's Power is somewhat reminiscent of the Cher-Ami sniper that you can get from Moxxi's Slaughterdome, because its special effect is that it can occasionally proc a transfusion orb that will heal the player. If you're curious, the Kiro's Power receives its special effect from the unique Kiro's Power accessory, which not only gives you the chance of spawning a transfusion orb, but it also boosts the weapon's damage and causes the sniper to be purely explosive. Something that's also worth mentioning is that the Kiro's Power can potentially be a hybrid weapon, as it can occasionally spawn with the legendary Cyclops sniper scope. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the Cyclops, its special effect is that it boosts critical hit damage while you're zoomed in, and it's also known for having the highest zoom of any sniper in Borderlands 1. So provided that you can get the Cyclops scope on your Kiro's Power, you're potentially gaining the best of what both weapons have to offer. Ultimately, I think the Kiro's Power is a pretty solid sniper rifle that you should keep an eye out for, and if you can get that hybrid version, it becomes even more powerful. Number 5, the Skull Masher. Unlike the Borderlands 2 version, which got considerably weaker as the result of the original B shield nerf, the Skull Masher in Borderlands 1 is a pretty powerful sniper rifle in all difficulties. And you may also be interested to know that the original Skull Masher has a ×6 projectile multiplier as opposed to the Borderlands 2 version, which only has a ×5 projectile multiplier. Now, the Skull Masher gets its unique effect from the legendary Skull Masher barrel for Jacob sniper rifles, and when compared to a more standard sniper rifle barrel, you're getting increased spread and recoil along with reduced damage. However, you're also getting the 5 additional projectiles. Personally speaking, I like the Skull Masher in Borderlands 1 because it will usually hit 90% of the time, and unlike most snipers which use one projectile and can even miss while scoped, due to sniper rifles' projectile spread in Borderlands 1, the Skull Masher is generally more effective because at least 2 or 3 of the projectiles will often hit the target. Plus, because the Skullmasher is a Jacob's weapon, it has above average base damage, so the damage reduction caused by the Skullmasher's barrel isn't too severe in my personal opinion. Ultimately, I really like this weapon for Borderlands 1, and I recommend that you pick it up if you see one drop. Number 4. The Cobra. In my opinion, the Borderlands 1 Cobra is much better than the Borderlands 2 version. Not only does the Borderlands 1 Cobra have this really cool black aesthetic, but it is also a semi-automatic sniper rifle, which makes the gun overall feel more ergonomic. Plus, you're also getting a fire rate improvement over the Borderlands 2 Cobra, which will allow the Borderlands 1 Cobra to have much higher DPS, relatively speaking. Now, the Cobra gets its special effects from the legendary Cobra accessory for Torque sniper rifles, and the main difference between a regular explosive sniper accessory and the Cobra's is that the Cobra accessory provides no damage penalty at the cost of reduced fire rates. Now, in my experience, while this debuff to fire rate is noticeable on the Cobra, it doesn't really make the weapon frustrating to use like the Borderlands 2's bolt action version is. I also think you'll find that since the Cobra is an explosive sniper, that you will find that it's quite useful up against a variety of different enemy types. If the Cobra were to return in a future game, I think I'd like to see this particular version, as it's far more useful and fun to use. Now, if you see one of these in Borderlands 1, I highly recommend that you pick it up. Number 3, the Reavers Edge / Penetrator Hybrid. So the Reavers Edge Penetrator is a hybrid sniper rifle that combines the Reavers Edge scope with the Dahl Penetrator sniper barrel. Now, what this ultimately produces is a Reavers Edge that can fire fully automatic and retains both the positive and some of the negative traits of both the Reavers Edge and the Penetrator. In other words, you're receiving the recoil reduction, fire rate, and magazine size boosts that the Penetrator barrel provides, while receiving the improved zoom, decreased spread, and mag size boost that you would get from the Reavers Edge scope. Now, while you do receive a debuff to your accuracy regen and you see somewhat increased spread from the Reavers Edge weapon skin, I think you'll find that these debuffs aren't serious enough to make the weapon unusable. I like this sniper rifle because it reminds me of the Vladov rifles in Borderlands 2. Now, while it's not quite as accurate due to the inherent projectile spread of most sniper rifles in Borderlands 1, I think you'll find that it can make for a better weapon, provided that you're using it with a Sniper class mod on Mordecai or a Spectre class mod on Lilith, as both of these class mods can potentially allow the player to regenerate sniper rifle ammo. If you want a Reavers Edge, or if you want to try your luck at trying to get the Reavers Edge Penetrator Hybrid, you're going to need to farm an enemy named Reaver that is located in Crom's Canyon. Number 2, the Orion. The Orion is a pretty awesome shock sniper rifle that has an interesting ricochet effect that allows the initial projectile to split into 3 after hitting a surface. And thanks to the Orion's high proc chance, you can also trigger a multitude of shock explosions this way, which allows the player to potentially deal a fair amount of damage. Like most of the other snipers that we've covered so far, the Orion gets its effect from its own legendary Orion accessory for S&S sniper rifles. Now, when compared to a standard shock accessory for snipers, you're getting no damage penalty and you're getting a magazine size increase of 4. Now, while that may not sound like much, you have to remember that this allows the Orion to have a magazine size of at least 15, which is actually pretty good for a sniper rifle. You've also got to remember that this particular accessory is also providing you with this ricochet effect, which theoretically could allow you to fire 3 shots for the cost of 1. So it is pretty awesome. I've mostly found that the best way to use the Orion is kind of to try to aim slightly in front of enemies so you can get the ricochet projectiles to veer up and hopefully hit them. And if you're able to pull it off, you can potentially deal a pretty respectable amount of damage to enemies. It really is a shame that the Orion didn't return in Borderlands 2, and instead we got the lousy Storm Sniper Rifle. Hopefully, the Orion will return in Borderlands 3. And finally, number 1, the Bessy. In my opinion, the Bessy is the best sniper rifle in Borderlands 1 by far, and the main reason for this is that it has a 0 projectile spread while scoped, which actually makes it more similar to how sniper rifles function in Borderlands 2. However, I think you'll also find that the other stats are pretty impressive as well. Speaking of those stats, a lot of the Bessy's unique properties come from its own unique scope, which not only has a slightly higher zoom than average, but also provides other useful traits like improved critical hit damage, improved base damage, and increased projectile speed. However, like I said earlier, the most valuable trait that this particular scope provides is 0 projectile spread while firing the weapon aiming down the scope. Now, there's not much else to say about this particular sniper rifle other than it likely inspired the sniper rifle design that we see in Borderlands 2, where those particular sniper rifles don't have any projectile spread. I guess if you want a Bessy sniper rifle, the Bessy can drop from badass Desperado enemies, and it can also drop from Cromorachs. And if you get your hands on this sniper from Borderlands 1, I guarantee that you won't regret it. But alright guys, I think that's going to pretty much wrap up this particular video. If you liked this video, feel free to leave a like, click the bell to join the notification squad, and as always, take care, and I'll see y'all next time.